Hi, I'm at the Mission Santa Clara, and I want to tell you a story. Actually, I want to tell you two stories. Back in the 1700s, Spain was one of the most powerful countries on earth. Its explorers had visited many parts of the Western Hemisphere, where we live now, and claimed vast lands for Spain. The Spanish and other Europeans called this part of the planet the New World. Other countries also visited the New World, among them France, England, and Russia. The Spanish king ordered small settlements, called missions, to be constructed in the newly claimed lands. Some of these were in Baja California, now part of Mexico. But Russia was starting to explore Alta California, the upper part of California where we live now. This worried the Spanish king, so he ordered more missions to be built here. Father Junipero Serra, a Catholic priest, led the mission building expedition and constructed the first California mission in San Diego in 1769. It was the first of 21 missions to be built over the next 54 years. Father Serra built the missions near reliable water sources and near existing Indian settlements. The Indians were a good source of labor, and it was Father Serra's goal to convert as many of them as he could to Christianity. The Indians, lured by trinkets and food, were willing workers in the missions and were treated kindly by Father Serra. Over the years, more Spanish and other European settlers came to California and ranched and farmed the land. They also brought diseases that decimated the Indians. Eventually, the European settlers became the dominant inhabitants, and the Indians and their culture faded away. In 2015, Pope Francis named Father Serra a saint. So is that the true story? Or is it this one? You remember the story about Spain in the 1700s. The king was nervous about Russia, and Father Serra was leading the mission expedition, right? Well, that's how this story starts too. But there is more to the story. The Native Americans in California, when the Spanish explorers first arrived, had lived in North America for thousands of years. They had established thriving communities and cultures throughout the continent. According to author Elias Castillo, Junipero Serra, far from a kindly father figure to the Native Americans, was a, quote, single-minded madman whose attitude was that he was there to save souls for God, and it didn't matter what type of life the Indians had in the missions. If they died soon, then that's more souls for heaven. That's what was in his mind, to keep the Indians free from sin, unquote. The Indians were not allowed to live as families. Girls over the age of 10 lived in crowded, filthy quarters with only a couple of toilet buckets for hundreds of girls. Conditions were ideal for disease, and epidemics were common. The friars first lured impressionable teenagers who were curious about the Spaniards' metal weapons and promises of an easier life. When they tried to leave, they were prevented by the Spanish soldiers. They were prisoners in a forced labor camp. As mothers followed their children and husbands followed their wives to the missions, the remaining Native American labor system collapsed. Some Indians tried to escape. Many were pursued and forcibly returned to the missions where they were punished. Far from kindly, Father Serra wrote to his military commander in 1775, quote, I am sending them to you so that a period of exile and 2 or 3 whippings, which your lordship may order applied to them on different days, may serve for them and for the rest for a warning, may be of spiritual benefit to all, and this last is the prime motive of our work, unquote. Serra's fanaticism about saving souls extended even to celebrating the fact that children were dying from a plague. In a letter to his superiors, he wrote, quote, in the midst of all our little troubles, the spiritual side of the missions is developing most happily. In Mission San Antonio, there are simultaneously 2 harvests at one time, one for wheat and of a plague among the children who are dying, unquote. Junipero Serra died in 1783 after overseeing the building of the first 9 of the 21 California missions. With their villages gone, some Indians resorted to stealing cattle for food and were hunted by Mexican ranchers. In 1851, the California governor ordered that all Indians in the state be killed. Estimates of the pre-Spanish coastal California Indian population were as many as 300,000. By 1890, it had fallen to under 17,000. In 2015, Pope Francis named Father Sarah a saint. Okay, now you've heard both stories. Can they both be true? Perhaps one of them is true. Could it possibly be a mix of the two? Your mission is to go and find out which parts are true and to tell that story.